The Switch 2 is here, and I don't care.
Excuse me, what?
Because in my eyes, the Nintendo DS and the 3DS are the best handheld consoles to ever be made. And to be honest, the Switch ain't got nothing on them. But there's one big question that still sparks debate today. Which DS or 3DS should you buy? In this video, we are taking a deep dive into both systems. Not just comparing specs, but everything from games, hardware, modding, and more. And honestly, whatever else I could think of, because I've been working on this script for a week now. But before we jump in, let's be honest, some of you may not know what a DS is because your first handheld system was one of these. So a very quick rundown. Released in 2004, the Nintendo DS, which yes, actually stands for dual screen, believe it or not, was a bold move by Nintendo. They had just come off the massively successful Game Boy Advance, which sold a staggering 81 million units worldwide. So the DS was a major departure from what they were doing before with the Game Boy line. So instead of playing it safe, Nintendo said, let's change it all. So now we got two screens, a touchscreen, and wireless connectivity, baby! Which that last one, kind of a really big deal because before that, we had to carry one of these around with us. Over the years, the DS had multiple redesigns, but by the time it was said and done, it had sold over 154 million units, making it the best-selling handheld of all time, and proving once again that innovation always triumphs in the gaming industry. Well, most of the time. In 2011, they launched the Nintendo 3DS, aiming to push innovation even further than what they did with the original DS. They brought glasses-free 3D, improved graphics, and a stronger online infrastructure like the eShop. RIP the eShop. But the 3DS launched at $250, had no games, and frankly, had no Riz. Nintendo quickly cut the price to $169.
Nice.
And introduced the Ambassador program, which I was a part of, which in time did rebound the 3DS to actually becoming a successful system for Nintendo. And it dropped some of the best handheld games ever made. Interestingly enough though, it only managed to sell 75 million units, which is a huge drop compared to the original DS. So that brings us back to the big question. Here in 2025, which one is actually worth buying? The DS remains the most popular handheld ever, though the Switch is catching up at 150 million units sold at the time of this recording. But the 3DS improved nearly everything from the original. Better hardware, better power, better features, and arguably better games. But which one is best for you? That is what this ultimate guide aims to answer. Before we continue, I want to kindly ask you to consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy this video. We are so close to 1,000 subs, and I really want to try to get over that hurdle. We have been uploading on YouTube for 2 years now. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the video. Let's jump in. Let's start by comparing the design and hardware of both systems. Since there were multiple variations of the DS and the 3DS, we'll go in order of release date, breaking down each model from its launch version to its final form. So naturally, let's begin with the original DS. The original DS was bold for its time, but in 2025, it feels bulky and somewhat low quality. The design is dated and the materials don't hold up very well, especially when you compare them to later models. While the system size is decent, the screens are surprisingly small for how much real estate the device takes up. Something important to note about the DS's is that each of them will have this hinge design that of course started with the original DS. Not all of them will be broken like this, of course. In addition to that, every single DS essentially has the same layout with the D-pad on the left side and the A, B, X, Y button layout on the right side. The start and select button, including the power button, sometimes will move, and we'll note that when it comes up, but for the most part, every DS and 3DS essentially look like this. For this DS, you have the game card slot in the very back next to the stylus, and we have a GBA slot in the back as well. The volume slider is in the bottom of the system, and let's not forget the aux port. Size comparison, here is the original DS with the Nintendo Switch, next to the Switch Lite, next to the PlayStation Portal, and next to the Steam Deck. Let's take a look at some stats. We have the AMR7 for the touchscreen in the bottom and the AMR9 for the top screen. 4 megabytes of RAM, and battery life is 5 to 8 hours on max brightness with 15 to 19 hours on the lowest setting. I think the DS is not very comfortable nowadays. Its bulkiness does help a little bit, but honestly the design has been so improved on when it's later iterations that I simply cannot recommend it. Fun fact about the Nintendo DS, it was the first video game console to be played on Mount Everest in June 2005. In fact, it was one of the only piece of technology that would not fail as you got up to the mountain. And the game that was played on the very top of the mountain was Madden DS. A massive improvement over the original, the DS Lite feels sleeker and more polished, though it is still somewhat fragile. The buttons feel so much better, and Nintendo managed to add bigger screens on a much smaller console. And let's not forget why this system was called the DS Lite. The backlight was so much brighter than the original DS. On the DS Lite, we keep the D-pad on the left, X, Y, B, A on the right. We now have the start and select buttons on the bottom right hand side. We still have the GBA slot in this DS Lite. However, when you enter it, it will be sticking a little bit out. Not the biggest deal, but something to take note of. We have the shoulder buttons, charger port, cartridge slot. We now have the stylus on the back right hand side of the DS. The volume button stays in the same location alongside the aux port. So instead of a power button, we had a slide button, which thank God they did not continue to use in further iterations, because it's just such a weird choice. The fact that it might actually shut off your device while playing doesn't make sense why Nintendo did that. Size comparisons for the DS Lite next to the original DS, next to the Switch, Switch Lite, PlayStation Portal, and Steam Deck. Let's hop into the stats. A thinner and lighter design makes it far more portable and enjoyable to hold than the original DS. And you can see that it's gotten a lot smaller than the regular DS, while making the screens bigger. And obviously the DS Lite had a significantly better backlight than the original, hence the name Lite. We have the same processors for the touchscreen and the top screen, still 4 megabytes of RAM, and a 5 to 8 hours of battery life on the highest setting, and 19 hours of battery life with the lowest settings on. And it really didn't sacrifice that much battery life. It was a huge win. I think that the DS Lite is such a big upgrade from the original DS. I love everything about it more than the DS, other than the size. And honestly, it was my go-to for DS games for years, especially when I used Action Replay. The Action Replay that I own only works with the DS Lite. So whenever I wanted to cheat in Pokemon, it was on this DS. Fun fact about the DS Lite, it was used as a McDonald's training tool. In Japan, McDonald's used a custom DS Lite program called eSmart 2.0, and it taught employees how to prepare food and take This is so dumb. It taught employees how to prepare food and to take orders more efficiently. And the program was so effective that they kept it there for years. That's awesome. This is peak DS design. The matte finish feels premium, and the buttons are clicky and satisfying. Nintendo also added a camera to the system, though the usefulness is somewhat questionable nowadays. Something not questionable is the SD card slot that they put into this DS. I cannot believe Nintendo thought of adding one back in 2009. Trust me, I am so thankful. Unique features for the DSi is, like I mentioned, the camera in the front, D-pad, X, Y, A, B buttons, select and start in exact same location as they were on the DSi, but we did get rid of the power slider and are back to a power button. The speakers stay on top of the DS. The aux port is also in the back, but as you could see, no GBA or Game Boy Color card reader. The stylus is in the exact same spot as the DS Lite, including the game card slot and the charger port, and of course the SD card reader slot. And with the introduction of Wi-Fi to the DS family, we now receive another colored slot here on the corner of the DS. It used to be just a red and green light to show you how much battery you had, and now we continue to have the red and green light, but also a yellow light to show if you are connected to the internet. Size comparison: here's the DSi next to the original DS, DS Lite, Nintendo Switch, Switch Lite, PlayStation Portal, and the Steam Deck. All right, here are the stats for the DSi. A slightly larger screen makes for a better experience, though the resolution remains the same as the other DSs. But due to the new power and screens, the DSi is capable of displaying 260,000 colors. We have the exact same processor, the AMR7 for the touchscreen, the AMR9 for the top screen, 16 megabytes of RAM now, so huge jump in RAM. Battery life is now 3 to 14 hours depending on the brightness. Could not get exact numbers. This is personally my favorite DS in the market. I think it's the most comfortable. The buttons feel great. It is a tad bit small, but overall it is an amazing DS. This is now my go-to whenever I play any DS games. I'll play it on my DSi. Fun fact about the DSi: Lego builder Sean Kenny built a giant DSi out of Lego. This was on display at the Nintendo New York store for 6 months in 2009. I'm sorry, but I have a confession to make. The DSi XL is the one system I don't own. I know. I'm a fraud. This is the only DS I will not have for this video, but I will do my best to break it down from what I've seen online. So you may be wondering why I have 3 DSi's and 0 DSi XLs. And personally, for me, the biggest reason is that the DSi XL has a glossy finish in the outside, and the original, or I guess like the regular DSi's, have a matte finish, and I just much prefer that feeling. Maybe that's just an issue for me and it won't be an issue for you, and if it's not an issue for you, that's awesome. I think I would enjoy a DSi XL. I'm just kind of coping about the whole gloss thing. It bothers me, but not that much. Because trust me, if I had one, I wouldn't complain. So let's look at the DSi XL stats. So we see that there is a significant upgrade to the size of the device and that of the screen. And look at this battery life, 4 to 17 hours depending on brightness. Wow! I wish modern day consoles could pull numbers like this. We keep the exact same processor that we've been having for the entire DS line, and we keep the 16 megabytes of RAM that the regular DSi has. I wish I could speak more on the comfort of the DSi XL, but I don't have one. But I'm gonna assume that it feels great. I love the form factor of the original DSi, so I imagine that I would love it for the XL. But I still have a fun fact for the DSi XL. It was the first Nintendo handheld console to be specifically marketed to adults. Nintendo even released a Brain Age and Brain Training bundle with the DSi XL to attract older users. Some Japanese commercials even featured senior citizens playing a DS, which apparently was very rare back in the day. So that's super interesting. Whew, okay, so that covers the DS lineup. Now let's move to 3DSs. We have a lot to touch on with the original 3DS. At first glance, it may not seem like much has changed, but a lot has changed. Excuse the back portion, it blew up on me. The 3DS returns to a glossy finish both inside and outside. It retains the 2 screens, camera and aux port, but now adding a screen in the inside as well. The stylus is placed in the back next to the cartridge slot, similar to the original DS, but the biggest new addition is the circle pad on the left side, a thumbstick that remains on every single 3DS moving forward. We continue with the power button, again, no slider. A home button is introduced with the 3DS models next to the start and select button, While people complain about the mushy feel, I honestly never found an issue with it. The system's glasses-free 3D was the biggest selling point, but it had a rough launch. Many users reported headaches, and in some cases the 3D simply just didn't work. Personally, I never use the 3D due to how much it drains the battery, but if it's important to you, just know that this 3DS won't really deliver on that 3D experience. Size comparison for the 3DS next to the original DS, DS Lite, DSi, Nintendo Switch, Switch Lite, Portal, and Steam Deck. Stats for the 3DS. The 3DS is roughly around the same size as the DSi, but with a big jump in resolution and hardware, as to be expected. But with that, we do take a pretty big hit to the battery life, a trend that we unfortunately still face today. We get a very new shiny GPU. The RAM jumps all the way to 128 megabytes. The battery life now is 3 to 5 hours during 3DS games and 5 to 8 hours while playing DS games, depending on your settings. Now, comfort-wise, I'll be honest, I don't love it. Obviously, I don't use this 3DS anymore, but even just holding it, it feels way too small and almost like the edges are like digging into my palms. It's weird. It is similar size to the DSi, but it's actually a little bit smaller, which explains why I like the DSi more than the 3DS. Overall, it is the least desirable design out of all the 3DSs, so honestly, let's just talk about those. Fun fact about the 3DS, it is the first system ever where the Mario Tennis game was released before the Mario Golf game. Who knew? Just 1 year after the original 3DS, the 3DS XL arrived. Unfortunate for those who had just bought the original 3DS, like myself. But here are the changes. We now have a matte finish on both inside and the outside of the system. It is a very welcome change. The home button is now an actual button instead of the mushy one from the original. The stylus has moved from the top back to the right side of the console. Circle pad remains unchanged. We now have a wireless slider. With the original 3DS, in order to turn on and off Wi-Fi, you had to do it through the actual system. This gives you an option to do it outside. Aux port remains. And of course, the game slot also in the back next to the charger. Volume slider on the left side, and you have the 3D slider on the top portion of the 3DS. 3D functionality is the same as the original 3DS, meaning the same issues remain with this 3DS, something to keep in mind. 3DS XL size comparison next to the original DS, DS Lite, DSi, 3DS, Switch, Switch Lite, PlayStation Portal, and Steam Deck. Stats for the 3DS XL. The screens for the 3DS XL was stated to be 90% larger than the original 3DS screens, and the battery life was increased by 86%, including the weight of the device going up by 46%. Processor, I still only saw the Nintendo ARM, but we keep the same Pika 2000 GPU that the regular 3DS had, and we keep the 128 megabytes of RAM. Battery life is 3.5 to 5.5 hours for 3DS games and 6 to 10 hours on DS games depending on brightness and usage. Comfort-wise, it is hard to express how much better this 3DS XL is from the original 3DS. It's bigger, its shoulder buttons feel so much better, and overall it doesn't feel like it's digging into my hands. It's a great device, and I think if 3DSs stopped here, nobody would have complained. But we have 4 more iterations to go through, so let's hop into them. Oh, almost forgot my 3DS XL fun fact, and that is, despite Nintendo saying that the 3DS XL will not replace the original 3DS, it virtually did. They completely stopped using the original 3DS on any marketing material that came out post 3DS XL, and it all but disappeared from Nintendo's website. I wonder why. The 2DS is the odd one out in the 3DS family. It was designed specifically for younger children, and it had a few key design choices to represent that. For starters, the hinge was obviously removed, making it more durable for younger children, and the 3D function was removed entirely as it was not recommended for children under the age of 7. Despite its unusual look, many people find the 2DS to be one of the most comfortable DSs to hold. It's also incredibly sturdy, and it could probably double as a doorstop. But we keep the circle pad, D-pad, X, Y, B buttons, start and select, home button all by itself now. Aux port, sleep mode is now regulated to a slider, interestingly enough. L and R, cart, charging port. Stylus on the right side of the DS. It has an SD card slot, and honestly, now that I think about it, I don't think I mentioned that for the 3DS XL and the regular 3DS. SD card slot and an SD card slot, and volume slider on the left hand side. Size comparison for the 2DS next to the original DS, DS Lite, DSi, 3DS, 3DS XL, Nintendo Switch, Switch Lite, PlayStation Portal, and the Steam Deck. Here are the stats for the 2DS. Only notable change here is the display screen on the top of the 2DS has a lower resolution than the original 3DS and 3DS XL. This is probably due to it not needing the extra power for 3D effects. The screens are also a tad bit smaller than the original 3DS's model. We keep the same processors at AMR 11 and the AMR 9. We keep the same GPU and the same RAM. Battery life for the 2DS is 3.5 to 5.5 hours on 3DS games and 5 to 9 hours on DS games, again depending on brightness and usage. Now for comfort, as I mentioned, a lot of people really enjoy the 2DS for its comfort. Never really played the 2DS before working on this video, and I gotta agree, it feels great. It's arguably the most comfortable DS out there, honestly. And it is actually perfect for kids. This is much better than giving them a tablet, in my opinion. I'm genuinely surprised how well Nintendo did with this system. Big thumbs up. Fun fact about the 2DS, though it cannot display 3D, it can take 3D pictures. Pretty cool. The new 3DS and new 3DS XLs were Nintendo's Pro models featuring major upgrades. The 3D was finally fixed with the new 3DSs. We received new 3D technology that adjusts to head movements and reduce headaches. We also got the C-Stick for better camera controls in games like Majora's Mask and Monster Hunter. We received the ZL and ZR buttons on both these systems as well. Newer and faster processors for these systems enabled for new 3DS exclusive games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3D to only play on the new 3DS models. Something only the new 3DS received was changeable faceplates. This does not follow through with the XL model, which honestly makes this one really cool. The new 3DS gets a matte finish inside and outside, and the new 3DS XL gets a gloss finish on the outside but retains the matte finish on the inside. Keep the circle pad, D-pad, C-Stick, and something really cool to note about these buttons is that they represent the same colors on the Super Famicom that came out in 1990 in Japan. The new 3DS XL does not keep the same colors for the buttons, but the letters are changed. We retain the home button in the middle just like the 2DS. The power button is now in the bottom next to the stylus, the aux port, and the new location for the game cart, leaving just the charging port on top with the new Z and R buttons, obviously. The 3D slider stays in the same location, but the volume slider is now on the opposite side of it, which is pretty cool. Both of these systems are very, very similar, and really is just like the finish on the outside and the faceplate changes, and obviously the size that really differentiates the two. Other than that, they are essentially the exact same thing. Size comparison for the new 3DS next to the original DS, DS Lite, DSi, 3DS, 3DS XL, 2DS, and the new 3DS XL, Switch, Switch Lite, PlayStation Portal, and Steam Deck. Now for the new 3DS XL. Next to the original DS, next to the Lite, DSi, 3DS, 3DS XL, 2DS, new 3DS, Switch, Switch Lite, PlayStation Portal, and the Steam Deck. Important things to note here are the substantial upgrades to the processor, GPU, and RAM on both systems. The resolution, however, does stay the same as the original 3DS line. Battery life for the new 3DS is 3.5 to 6 hours on 3DS games and 6.5 to 10.5 hours for DS games. And for the new 3DS XL, it's 3.5 to 7 hours for 3DS games and 7.5 to 12.5 hours for DS games. Regarding comfort, these are my go-to systems when it comes to playing 3DS games. If I'm playing an action adventure game, I would gravitate to my new 3DS XL. But if I'm playing a more chill game like Pokemon, I tend to gravitate towards my new 3DS. Both of these systems feel amazing in my hands, and I never get cramps or feel fatigued when playing for multiple hours. And that is something that I always get when I play on my Switch or my Switch Lite. I absolutely love these two DSs. But there is one more DS that gives them a run for their money. Fun fact about both the new 3DSs, instead of being a traditional analog stick, the C-Stick doesn't actually move. It just senses pressure, kind of like how the old laptops from back in the day used to work. That's why the C-Stick feels a little weird and janky to use compared to a normal joystick. We have finally reached the last revision of the 3DS family, and funny enough, it's not even a 3DS. The new Nintendo DS XL was Nintendo's answer to creating a more affordable, lightweight, and accessible version of the new 3DS XL while still keeping all of the hardware improvements. Crazy enough, this system launched at just $150, making it the budget-friendly option for anybody. And honestly, I should have bought every single 2DS I saw in the store back in the day because I would be rich right now. Lower price was largely due to ditching the 3D feature. And at this point, Nintendo had finally realized that most people weren't even using 3D anyways. Instead, they focus on making a final, perfect revision, keeping the large screens, a faster processor, and overall improved performance that the new 3DS lines brought. And in many ways, they saved the best for last. And before I forget, there is a border on the new 3DS. This is not a part of the screen. It's just a border that kind of, is around the screen. And they got rid of that completely with the new 2DS XL. And it's just a full screen. I absolutely love that they did that. We keep the joystick, D-pad, buttons, C-Stick, start and select, and the home button move to the left hand side of the console. Camera is now not on the top but in the middle, again to make room for that beautiful screen. Power button, stylus, aux port, and behind this little flap we have the game cart and the SD card slot. This flap, you will notice, is very similar to what they did with the Switch. The back cameras are now on the back of the system. We keep the ZR and LR buttons, and here's a charging port. Volume button on the side, and obviously no 3D slider. And don't even get me started on these special editions. The new 2DS XLs have hands down the most unique and best looking special editions out of any DS model. Better than the original, better than the 3DS line. The 2DS has the best ones. Size comparison for the new 2DS XL next to the original DS, DS Lite, DSi, 3DS, 3DS XL, 2DS, new 3DS, new 3DS XL, Switch, Switch Lite, PlayStation Portal, and Steam Deck. Stats! Almost everything is identical to the new 3DS XL aside from the aesthetic changes and the removal of the 3D functionality. Battery life for the 2DS is 3.5 to 6.5 hours on 3DS games and 6.5 to 10.5 hours on DS games. The 2DS XL is just as comfortable as the 3DS XL, and that is a great thing. I'm gonna be honest, it's really hard to choose between the new 3DS XL and the new 2DS XL because they both feel great in my hands. But sometimes I gotta lean towards the 2DS XL because it has a matte finish in the outside and in the inside. I did that reverse. Hopefully the 2DS is remarkable and a great option for those who are trying to jump into the 3DS family. Fun fact about the new 2DS XL, the speakers are on the hinges of the device. They're right there on the hinges. And in every other DS, they're on the top. They're not on the actual hinge of the DS. How cool is that? Okay, so we are 8 pages into the script and we have a lot more to go. So let's move on to the next section of the video. Backwards compatibility. The original DS line has a crazy 3,957 games available, one of the largest gaming libraries ever. While the 3DS has a total of 1,547 games available. But that's fine because the 3DS made up for it with higher quality games, better graphics, and more accessibility to games online like on the eShop. Backwards compatibility is kind of hard to talk about when you're talking about DSs in general because there are so many versions and they all kind of do different things. They all play different games. So I'm gonna try my best to break it down as simply as possible. All right. So starting with the original DS and the DS Lite. As mentioned before, these games obviously play DS games, but they can also play Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color games. Every single other 3DS and Nintendo DS cannot, unless you do some extra stuff, which we'll go into later. That being said, every single DS game can be played on every single 3DS. And obviously you can't play a 3DS game on a regular DS. But you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's a no-brainer. You should obviously just get a 3DS. And for some people, that is the right choice. And we will talk about pricing in a few minutes, but I think it's important to note that a lot of people enjoy playing games on the hardware they were designed for. I know I do. I know if I'm playing Pokemon Gen 4 and 5, I'm going to try to play that on a Nintendo DS. And some people may have a larger backlog of Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games that they want to play. So in that instance, the original DS and the DS Lite make more sense for them. And that is exactly what this video is for, to give you, the buyer, as much information as possible if you are interested in buying one of these devices. Because, spoiler alert, they are not getting any cheaper. And the games aren't either. Many original DS games have imploded in price in recent years. Pokemon games in particular are super expensive right now, and for many of you, those are the games that you want to buy. I would suggest searching for the games that you are interested in beforehand, checking pricing, checking availability. Because 3DS games, on the other hand, are still fairly priced in my opinion. I have made a top 5 games list for the DS and the 3DS in the past, so if you are interested in knowing what my favorite games are, please click on that link. All I ask is that you watch those videos after this video because of YouTube algorithm and all that. And some of you may already be typing in the comments, well, I don't plan on purchasing any of my games because I plan to homebrew my console. And my response is, that is a great idea and we should talk about it. Modding your DS and 3DS is the most exciting thing that these consoles have going for them. Why do people in 2025 gravitate towards the DS and towards the 3DS when there's not only other competitors out there, but they are expensive? I think it's because the modding and homebrewing experience for both these systems isn't only easy, but it opens the possibilities of what these devices can do. Let's start with the original DS line. Personally, the only modded DS I have is my Pokemon White DSi, and the reason for this is because you can mod it with just an SD card and you do not need an R4 flash card. I know it is possible to mod your original DS or DS Lite, but you will need one of these R4 cards to do it. So I don't have that much experience with modding one of these, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I do know it is possible, even though there might be some extra steps. Modding your DS is so easy nowadays. I will not be showing you how to mod your DS in this video, but if you are interested in doing so, I am going to leave a link in the description down below. Just click on the link and find the DS that you are trying to mod and follow that guide. I would suggest to follow the guides online because if you follow a video, it might not be up to date. And I just, I've seen too many bad videos of how to mod your DS. So why would you want to mod your DS in the first place? Well, for me, I modded it because I wanted to play my Pokemon ROM hacks on my Nintendo DS. Like I mentioned earlier, I like playing generation of games on the system they came out in. So Gen 4 to 5 ROM hacks, I play them on my DSi. But modding your DS really does open a lot of really cool possibilities for the system, and it adds a lot of new goodies. So let's go over some of that stuff. For starters, you can now run custom apps and emulators. So if you really want to play NES, SNES, Game Boy, or Game Boy Advance games, you can now do that via emulation on your DSi. This is huge for those who want a Game Boy Advance slot, but don't want to buy a DS Lite. You can now buy a DSi, but you do have to mod it before you could play those Game Boy Advance games. You also get the option to play DSi and DSiWare games from the SD card in your system, which is cool because the DSi shop is obviously closed nowadays. So instead of those games being gone forever, they have a second chance of life in your DS. You can now install custom themes for your DS. I'm super lame. I have not done so yet, but I have seen some really cool themes online. And honestly, there's so much more, like increasing the GPU speed to make apps run better, using the DSi as a media player, using it as a freaking Kindle, and being able to play online multiplayer games again. And if you think that's exciting, we haven't even touched on the 3DS yet. Again, if you want to mod your 3DS, please follow the description down below. It is super simple to follow that guide. Honestly, if you can follow instructions like hit that subscribe button or hit that like button, then you can follow the instructions on how to mod your 3DS. So what does a modded 3DS get you? Well, a plethora of new applications. My favorites being Anemone, Checkpoint, and the H Shop. Anemone is a theme manager app. You can change the background, music, folders, and much more, and there are literally thousands of options to choose from. Checkpoint lets you back up saves and restore save files for your 3DS carts. It also does the same for Nintendo DS games, Game Boy Advance games, and Game Boy Color games that you have installed. And the best app you can get from modding your 3DS is the H Shop, which gives you the ability to download every single item that was on the eShop. Yes, every single item. Some other really cool benefits you get for modding your 3DS is removing region lock from your system. The 3DS is a region lock system, so modding it removes that restriction and allows you to play games from around the world. You can still emulate games just like you can with the DSi, so all of the systems that I mentioned earlier can be played on the 3DS. You also have access to way more ROM hacks and way more fan-made games on the 3DS, so you can play through all of those. And of course, homebrewing your 3DS means you can play games online again, like Mario Kart and Super Smash Bros. for free, because nowadays Nintendo charges you to play those games online. Jeez. So homebrewing your DS or your 3DS really removes all of the Nintendo limitations they put on these systems, and honestly, sky's the limit. I would go as far as to say that the modding community for the DS and the 3DS is what's keeping these systems alive to this day. Every year the community grows, and I feel like I'm always seeing new apps, new ROM hacks all the time. It's really exciting. So yeah, it is a good time to jump on the DS wagon because, like I said, sky is the limit. But before you make your final decision on which DS you are going to get, let's go over our final section of this video, the price of the systems. This is a part of the video that gets me a little excited and a little worried. All the prices I put have been researched in 2025, so they may have gone up or may have gone down. But I can safely say, since I've been buying 3DSs, that they have only ever gone up in price, and they are obviously no longer being made. And as I mentioned, people keep finding out new ways to use them, new apps to put on them, and they are collectible. They're collector's pieces. It is Nintendo after all, and it is very unlikely that they'll ever make another DS, 3DS type of console again. But I mean, again, who knows? So the prices I'm going to go over are for a used system and a sealed system. Okay, going in order of release date, prices are a mix between eBay, Mercari, and Amazon. These are not special editions, and they are mostly American. As mentioned before, the 3DS is region locked, so technically you can buy a Japanese 3DS for cheaper than an American one, but it's going to be region locked unless you mod it. So just keep that in mind. If you find a much cheaper 3DS somewhere, make sure it's not Japanese, or be ready to mod it. So all of these are American models. Let's go over it. The original Nintendo DS, used $40 to $70, sealed $320. A used DS Lite will range you between $80 to $100, $350 to $400 sealed. A used DSi will range you between $100 and $150, and a sealed one $600 to $650. A DSi XL used will range $150 to $200, and sealed $650 to $800. A used original 3DS will range you $120 to $180, and sealed $340. And a used 3DS XL will range you $200 to $250, and $650 sealed. A used 2DS will range you $60 to $110, or $500 for a sealed. A new 3DS will range you $200 to $250, or $750 for a sealed one. A new 3DS XL will range you $250 to $300, and $900 for a sealed one. And a new 2DS XL will range you $200 to $250, and $700 for a sealed one. So the prices I listed were obviously the prices I saw online, and it is very possible for you to be able to purchase one of those systems for cheaper than what I showed you. Before you go online, I would suggest checking your local marketplace, OfferUp, or Facebook Marketplace for DSs that may be around you. Honestly, that's where I got most of my DSs, were from local marketplaces, just because I did find some really good DSs for really great prices. For example, this new 2DS Pikachu edition I got for $100. Yeah, it's not in like the best condition. It's got some scratches here and there, but for $100, I felt like it was super worth it. Keep in mind that was like 4 years ago, so I don't know how much it goes for today. So should you invest into the DS/3DS stock market? So like, you know, you want to flip your DS. No, I don't think you're gonna get that much luck flipping DSs nowadays. But if you want to play the crap out of a DS, then I think you should jump into the market. But whatever system that you end up choosing, I say you look into the one that speaks to you the most, the one that gets you the most excited, and aim for that. You know, you don't want to be me and get a console and then want to get another one later on. You hopefully use all the information I've given you in this video, and you're able to make one purchase and get the for sure DS that you want to, and play the crap out of it. Which brings me to my final verdict. If you made it this far in the video, I genuinely cannot thank you enough. It took me about a week to write this script and another week to edit and record. So a lot of time went into it. And again, if you just got here, Thank you so much. So let's review my final suggestions for all of you. So I'm going to give you 4 different answers for 4 different types of consumers, and hopefully one of these aligns with you and helps you know what I would suggest for you. And the first one I suggest is what is going to be the best choice for the budget gamer. And for them, in my opinion, their best choice is going to be the 2DS. You don't care what DS you get, you just want to get one and play all of the games. 2DS is going to be the best bang for your buck. It plays DS games, it plays 3DS games, you can mod it, it does all the same stuff as the other ones, and it's super cheap. This is the budget gamer's choice. And the next one is what's the best choice for your nostalgic gamer? And that's easy. For me, it's going to go to the DSi. Pokemon Generations 4 and 5 are my favorite games of all time, and I play them every single year. And whenever I do play them, I play them on my DSi, and it just makes me feel like a kid again. It really does. I get the nostalgia itch from the DSi. So it is my choice. If you are in it for nostalgia, you could still hack it, but you have all the ROM hacks, DSi. And the next one's going to be the best choice for the spender / collector. I know we didn't dive too much into the collecting aspect of the DS and the 3DS, but for the collector, I would suggest buying their favorite new 2DS XL or new 3DS XL. That's special edition. So for me, I have my Majora's Mask special edition. It is kind of like my big flagship DS, I guess. That's like the most expensive one that I have. But if I was going to buy a new 3DS, it would be something like this one. It's kind of like my holy grail of 3DSs right now. I don't have one. I wish I could have one, but it's like $500 for the cheapest one I could find. So I can't, justify that since I already have like 20 other DSs. Save up, get the special edition at one time and do it that way. And finally, for my overall pick, the best DS or 3DS that you should buy in 2025, and that is the new 3DS. I love the size of this system and the fact that it fits in every single one of my pockets. It has the matte finish on the inside and the outside of the system, and there is no denying how freaking cool the changeable faceplates are on this DS. I have like 4 different faceplates for it, and every time I change it, it feels like I have a brand new DS. It's like another special edition. I absolutely love the new Nintendo 3DS, and this is the DS that all of you should be aiming for, in my opinion. If you're just going to listen to me, get this one. This is the best one. No matter which system, DS or 3DS that you pick, they are still amazing in 2025. Whether you're into modding, collecting, nostalgia, these consoles still have so much to offer. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. Check out the top 5 games videos. I'll put them somewhere right here. And God, if you got this far, you're so beautiful. Hugs and kisses. Bye.